Okay, let's break this down like we're sitting and talking over coffee, because this story mixes politics, immigration enforcement, constitutional questions, and some really heated Senate floor debates. At its core, this is about whether ICE, immigration and customs enforcement, should be barred from carrying out immigration enforcement inside church property, and how two U.S. Senators, Alex Padilla, Democrat California, and John Kennedy, Republican Louisiana, ended up on opposite sides of that fight. Senator Alex Padilla introduced an amendment during a Senate Budget Committee hearing that was meant to prevent ICE from doing immigration raids inside churches, that is, to make sacred spaces off-limits for enforcement operations. Padilla's reasoning was pretty straightforward. Churches are sensitive locations, places where people gather for worship, often including immigrant communities who may already be living in fear of deportation. There's a long-standing policy, dating back to the Obama era, that considered places like churches, schools, and hospitals as areas ICE should avoid for enforcement because of their special role in community life and constitutional protections. Opponents of recent policies say that rescinding those protections is harmful and chilling to religious freedom and community safety. To Padilla and other Democrats, and some religious leaders, this amendment wasn't just about immigration enforcement. It was about protecting constitutional rights, like the First Amendment right to freely practice religion, and preventing vulnerable people from being snatched up in a place of worship. That's a compelling image for a lot of people, someone in the middle of prayer being hauled off by federal agents. In a broader sense, Padilla has been framing the immigration enforcement actions we're seeing, including widespread ICE raids, the deployment of National Guard and Marines into cities like Los Angeles, and reported actions near or at sensitive sites, as overreach by the Trump administration and DHS, violating due process and basic norms of civil liberties. He has even publicly opposed funding measures that would continue to bankroll these agencies without reforms. For many immigrant communities, churches are more than places of worship. They are community hubs, support networks, and sometimes safe havens. The fear is that if ICE starts actively conducting raids inside those spaces, immigrants who used to show up for services, food pantries, or community events might opt to stay home in terror. Religious groups themselves have stepped into the legal fray, suing the federal government to stop ICE operations on church properties, arguing that the policy reversal jeopardizes religious liberty and drives congregations underground, afraid to participate in faith life. We're not just talking about churches. This comes amid a broader surge of mass immigration enforcement, including large-scale raids in cities like Los Angeles, increased militarization of immigration efforts, including National Guard deployments, and public outcry about how ICE and CBP treat immigrants, in some cases arresting civilians, including U.S. citizens, in perceived unconstitutional ways. Padilla has been vocal in opposition to these tactics, even giving speeches highlighting due process concerns and the role of ICE and DHS in actions that critics view as unconstitutional or abusive. On one side, you have folks saying, "This is basic decency and constitutional protection. Don't raid houses of worship." On the other, many Republicans, including John Kennedy, argue that law enforcement shouldn't be tied up with restrictions when enforcing the law, especially if the argument is simply about who loves churches more. That starts to sound like political theater, and conservatives generally lean toward a stronger federal enforcement presence. They see attempts to carve out exemptions as undermining the rule of law. So where does Senator John Kennedy come in? In the hearing where Padilla offered this amendment, Kennedy made it clear, bluntly, that he did not support this idea. He opposed the amendment on principle. The reasoning, boiled down, goes like this. Law enforcement should not be hamstrung or told they can't enforce immigration laws just because someone happens to be inside a church. ICE's mandate, as Kennedy and many Republicans see it, is to find and remove people who are unlawfully present, including those who commit crimes. If someone fitting those criteria is inside a church, well, law enforcement should still be able to do their jobs. Carving out one special class of place, churches, for exemption sends a message that criminals can simply hide in certain locations to avoid arrest, and that's anathema to those who prioritize law and order. This is consistent with how some Republicans frame immigration, push for strong enforcement, secure borders, and no sanctuary for undocumented people, whether that's in cities, states, or institutions like churches. This isn't a fringe idea. It harks back to debates about sanctuary cities in recent years, where conservatives argued sanctuary policies undermine the rule of law. Padilla's amendment was blocked. It did not pass. Kennedy's blunt opposition was part of why it didn't get the support needed. The Senate did not adopt a rule that would have specifically stopped ICE from doing enforcement actions on church property. From the outside, this might look like a Washington stalemate. One senator wants a carve-out, another doesn't. But it's actually symbolic of a much deeper national divide. Should immigration enforcement be restrained in the interest of civil liberties and community protections? Or should enforcement be unfettered, regardless of context, so long as it's legal? To some conservatives, restricting where ICE can go is a legal loophole that invites more illegal immigration and crime. To many liberals and immigrant rights advocates, not restricting it invites terrorizing of vulnerable communities and erosion of constitutional protections. People like Padilla and religious leaders pressing this issue are basically saying, if your church isn't harming anyone, why on earth should federal agents be allowed to sweep in? This appeals emotionally and constitutionally to ideas about freedom of religion, sanctuary, and the moral obligation not to terrorize worshippers. It's not just about immigration status. It's about whether a government should be allowed to storm a place where people feel safe and act in community with each other. On the flip side, Kennedy's crew, and many conservatives, lean into, if someone is a criminal or unlawfully present, it doesn't matter if they're in a church, you enforce the law everywhere. This perspective treats the amendment as somewhat symbolic and ineffective, or even dangerous. They worry it protects people lawbreakers. It's the classic tough on crime and tough on illegal immigration stance that resonates with many voters who feel enforcement has been too soft. Let me know what you think about this video in the comment section. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of my future uploads. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Let me know what you think or what you want to see next.